The room was thick with tension as the leaders of Earth gathered around the massive table, staring at the glowing holographic screen in front of them. For months, they had been in talks with the Intergalactic Council, a powerful alliance of civilizations that spanned the stars. The Council had offered Earth a place among them, promising advanced technology, protection from hostile forces, and a chance to join a thriving intergalactic community. But there was something about their offer that unsettled the leaders. It was too much, too quick. They had no idea what the Council truly wanted or why they were so eager to bring Earth into their fold. General Marcus Harris, a battle-hardened veteran of Earth's military, was the first to speak up. "We don't need them. We've fought wars, we've survived, and we've built ourselves into a powerful species. Why should we trust these aliens? What do they want from us?" His voice was full of conviction, but there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. President Claire Davis, the leader of Earth's government, stood silently for a moment, her mind racing. She had been the one pushing for Earth's acceptance into the Council, but even she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Still, her country's power, pride, and autonomy were on the line. "We don't need to rely on anyone. Earth is strong enough to make it on our own. If we accept their offer, we'll be giving up our freedom. We'll be just another part of their system. We can stand alone. We've always stood alone." There was a long silence as the leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Some agreed with the president, while others feared the unknown consequences of rejecting the Council's offer. Earth had made enemies over the years, enemies that were still out there, watching, waiting for an opportunity. At the center of the table, a small, blinking red light on the communication device signaled that the Council was waiting for Earth's response. The Council had been patient, allowing Earth to take its time, but the offer had an expiration date. If Earth didn't accept it now, the Council would move on, and who knew what that would mean for the future? "Make a decision," President Davis said, her voice firm, but a little shaky. "We either join the Council, or we stand on our own. We can't have it both ways." General Harris leaned forward, his fingers tapping the surface of the table. "This is our moment to show the galaxy that Earth doesn't need anyone. We have the strength. We have the technology. We have the will to survive." The room held its breath as the leaders debated fiercely. The tension was thick, and there was a palpable fear that their decision would either make them heroes or fools. What if they were wrong? What if the Council was right, and humanity was missing out on an opportunity to advance, to learn, to grow? Yet the thought of being controlled, of giving up their independence, filled them with dread. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, President Davis made her decision. "We're turning them down." Her words rang out like a verdict, and the room fell silent. Some of the leaders exchanged relieved glances, while others looked uneasy. There was no going back now. The decision was made. "Send the message," President Davis ordered, and a nervous officer quickly typed out the response on the holographic console. Earth would decline the Council's offer. As the officer hit send, the room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the consequences. They had just rejected one of the most powerful and ancient alliances in the galaxy. Could they really survive on their own? Would the Council even care? The answers were uncertain, but there was no turning back now. The response came almost immediately. A cold, neutral tone echoed through the room, and the message from the Council appeared on the screen. "We respect your decision, Earth. We hope you are ready for the challenges ahead." No sooner had the message been sent than a strange, deep hum vibrated through the floor. At first, it was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it quickly grew stronger. The walls seemed to tremble, and the lights flickered above. Then the sky outside the building darkened unnaturally, even though it was midday. A warning alarm blared across the city, cutting through the tense silence. "What's happening?" someone gasped, eyes wide with panic. General Harris stood up, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. "We've done it now," he muttered, his voice low, his tone filled with regret. The hum grew louder, and the skies above Earth seemed to pulse with an energy that none of them understood. Something was happening, something dangerous. But what? The room erupted into chaos as people scrambled to their positions, trying to make sense of the growing storm. But no one knew what to do. The decision had been made. And now, they would have to face the consequences. Outside, the first signs of disaster began to unfold. The ground beneath the city began to crack, and strange lights flickered in the sky, signaling that the Council's words were not just a warning. They were a promise. Humanity had just made its biggest mistake, and the cost of their arrogance was about to be paid. The chaos outside spread quickly. As the first tremors shook the Earth, cities across the planet began to experience strange phenomena. Buildings that had stood for centuries cracked and crumbled as if they were made of paper. The sky turned an ominous shade of violet, casting an eerie glow across the streets. In some places, the ground split open, swallowing entire blocks in an instant. Humanity had never seen anything like this before, and no one could comprehend what was happening. General Harris, standing in the control room, stared at the monitors with growing unease. "This is no natural disaster," he muttered under his breath. The world was spiraling into disaster, but he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. The moment they had rejected the Council, something inside him had told him it was the wrong decision. But it was too late now to turn back. The power of Earth's military couldn't stop whatever was happening. President Davis paced back and forth in her office, her face pale. The communications network was down, and all contact with other nations had been severed. No one knew exactly why or how the disaster had started, but everyone suspected it was connected to their rejection of the Council. The unsettling energy pulse they had felt moments before seemed to be the trigger for everything that followed. How could this happen? President Davis whispered, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of her desk. They had made a bold stand, but now it felt like a terrible mistake. What had they provoked? And why? A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts, and her chief advisor, Captain Adamson, entered the room. His face was grim. "Madam President, we're receiving a transmission from the Council." "Are they angry?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Captain Adamson nodded. "They're not angry. They're indifferent." The words hung in the air, chilling her to the bone. How could they be indifferent when Earth was falling apart? She could feel the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on her shoulders. "Put it on speaker," she ordered, and the image of a cold, emotionless figure appeared on the screen. It was an alien, tall, with smooth skin and eyes that glowed faintly. Its face was unreadable, expressionless, as it spoke in a calm, measured tone. "Earth," the alien said, its voice a strange mix of melodic and mechanical, "you have made your choice. We respect it. However, you will now bear the consequences. Your decision was not one of wisdom, but of pride. And pride has a way of leading to disaster." The screen flickered briefly, then the alien continued. "We will not intervene further. Your planet is on its own. We suggest you prepare for what's coming." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had started, and the screen went dark. The room was silent. The words echoed in President Davis's mind. "Your decision was not one of wisdom, but of pride." The alien's calm dismissal left a bitter taste in her mouth. There was no anger in their tone, just the cold finality of a force that was beyond their understanding. General Harris stormed into the room moments later. "What do they mean by that? What's coming?" "I don't know," President Davis admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm afraid we've made a terrible mistake." Outside, the sky darkened even further. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. The tremors had intensified, and the strange pulses of energy now flickered across the atmosphere. The once peaceful world was now on the brink of collapse. Cities were falling. Entire regions were being torn apart, and no one had any answers. People flooded into the streets, panic gripping their hearts as they realized the scale of the disaster. Emergency services were overwhelmed, and the military was powerless against the unknown force ravaging the planet. The human race was facing a threat far greater than anything they had ever encountered. And yet there was a sense that this wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a punishment, a direct result of their choice to reject the Council's offer. Back in the control room, General Harris clenched his fists in frustration. "We have to fight back. We have to do something. We don't even know who or what we're fighting," one of his officers replied, his voice shaking. "We don't know what we're up against." The military had been designed to fight human enemies, not the wrath of an ancient, powerful alien force. The Council's true strength had never been fully revealed, and now humanity was feeling the full weight of its mistake. A sudden shockwave rattled the building, and everyone inside lurched forward. The ground shook violently, and the walls seemed to bend under the pressure. Outside, the once clear sky was filled with strange, dark shapes. Alien ships hovering overhead, silent and menacing. "We've provoked them," General Harris said, his voice filled with regret. "And now, we'll pay the price." The Council had not declared war, but their power was unmistakable. Earth had rejected their offer of peace and protection, and in return, the planet was now facing an unimaginable crisis. The people of Earth had made a bold decision, but now, as the world fell into chaos, they were left with only one question: would humanity survive this mistake? The answer, it seemed, was still a long way off, and the worst was yet to come. The first signs of disaster were just the beginning. Earth, once so proud and confident, now faced the terrifying consequences of its arrogance. As the alien ships hovered above the planet, casting long shadows over the ruined cities, it became clear to everyone that this was not just a warning. It was an act of retribution. The skies above Earth rippled with strange, unnatural colors as the Council's ships began to emit pulses of energy that sent shockwaves across the planet. Cities continued to crumble, their towering skyscrapers reduced to dust in mere seconds. The once vibrant world now felt like a dying husk, and it was all because of one decision, a decision made out of pride and fear. General Harris, leading the military response, stood at the head of his command center, watching as the destruction unfolded in real time on the screen. His mind raced, trying to come up with a solution, but there was nothing. The Council's technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The power they wielded was unimaginable. Earth's greatest weapons seemed like toys in comparison. "General," an officer said, his voice strained, "we've lost contact with most of our forces. The Council's energy pulses are interfering with our communications. We can't coordinate anything." Harris slammed his fist on the console in frustration. "Damn it, we can't just sit here and do nothing." His thoughts turned back to the Council's words. "We will not intervene further. Your planet is on its own." The alien race had made it clear that Earth was no longer under their protection. The Council had passed judgment, and now the planet was suffering the consequences. A low hum filled the room, a deep, vibrating sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The walls of the command center trembled as another pulse of energy struck the Earth's surface. General Harris looked out the window, his gaze fixed on the burning horizon. Fires raged across the landscape, and smoke billowed into the sky, creating a thick black curtain that blotted out the sun. The world was dying, and humanity had no idea how to stop it. "Sir," one of his officers spoke again, a tremor in his voice. "We've received a message. It's from the Council." "Put it through," Harris ordered, his tone cold but filled with dread. The screen flickered to life, showing the same emotionless alien face they had seen before. The alien spoke with the same calm, mechanical tone, as though the destruction of Earth was simply a matter of fact. "You chose pride over wisdom. You chose to reject the aid of the Council. Now you will face the consequences. Your planet will not survive this. Your people will not survive this. You had a chance, but now you will be forgotten." The transmission ended, and the screen went black. The room was silent, the weight of the alien's words sinking in like a stone in the pit of Harris's stomach. Earth was on its own, and there was no one coming to save them. The Council had made their decision, and humanity was left to face the results. Outside, the alien ships continued to hover, their dark forms blocking out what little light remained. They were not there to conquer or enslave. They were there to watch as Earth's greatest civilization crumbled under the weight of its own decisions. It was a cruel and unforgiving judgment, but there was no going back now. Harris turned to his officers, his expression hardening. "Prepare for a counterattack," he ordered, though deep down he knew it was futile. The Council's power was too overwhelming. They had no chance against it, but they had to try. The people of Earth needed to see that they had not given up. As the military scrambled to launch what few remaining forces they had, President Davis stood alone in her office, gazing out at the destruction unfolding below. Her heart felt heavy, her mind racing with regret. She had made the decision, but now she could only watch as the world she had sworn to protect fell apart. "What have I done?" she thought, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of her desk. A knock on the door startled her, and Captain Adamson entered with a grim look on his face. "Madam President," he began, "we need to prepare for the worst. The Council's next move is coming. They're not going to let up." Davis nodded slowly, her eyes distant. "I know. It's over, isn't it?" "We're not giving up yet," Adamson replied, his voice filled with determination. "But we need to find a way to fight back. We need a plan." Davis stood up from her desk, her mind clouded with doubt, but also a flicker of resolve. "We have to do something. We can't just let them destroy everything we've worked for." Her eyes narrowed as she looked out the window once more. The sight of the alien ships hovering above the remains of Earth's greatest cities, filling her with a mixture of fury and helplessness. The world was teetering on the edge of destruction, and humanity had no idea how to stop it. The Council's wrath was a lesson in humility, a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, could escape the consequences of their actions. Earth had rejected the offer of help, and now the planet was paying the price. But even as the situation grew more dire, the human spirit refused to completely break. There was still a glimmer of hope, a small spark of defiance that refused to be extinguished. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the question remained: would humanity be able to find a way to turn the tide, or was it too late for redemption? Only time would tell. As the days passed, Earth's situation grew worse. The tremors that had once been intermittent were now constant, shaking buildings to their very foundations. The alien ships continued to hover above the planet, silent and unyielding, as if watching every moment of destruction unfold. Every attempt by the human military to retaliate had been met with failure, their weapons useless against the overwhelming power of the Council. The once proud forces of Earth seemed like nothing more than ants trying to fight a storm. General Harris stood in the remains of the military command center, staring at the flickering screens. The city outside had been reduced to rubble, and the few remaining survivors were scattered, desperate, and lost. The atmosphere was thick with despair, and for the first time, Harris felt the weight of their arrogance. How it had led them to this moment. He had believed in humanity's strength, its ability to stand on its own. But now, faced with the overwhelming power of the Council, that belief felt naive. The worst part was, the Council hadn't even been interested in conquering Earth. They were simply waiting, watching, allowing the consequences of their actions to unfold. "We have to do something," Harris muttered under his breath. But what could they do? Their greatest military minds had already failed. Earth's most advanced technology had proven useless against the Council's superior force. It seemed as though there was no hope, no chance for survival. Yet, amid the despair, a small group of scientists and military strategists had been working in secret, coming up with a plan. It was risky, insanely so, but it was all they had left. A last-ditch effort to fight back, even though they knew the odds of success were slim. The plan was simple in concept. use the remnants of Earth's advanced technology to disrupt the alien ship's energy pulses. If they could find a way to tap into the Council's weak points, perhaps they could turn the tide, at least for a time. It wasn't a solution to the greater problem, but it was something. Something to buy them time, to show the Council that humanity could still fight back. Captain Adamson, now one of the few remaining leaders, approached Harris, his face grim. "We're ready to move forward with the plan, sir," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Harris nodded, but there was no joy in his eyes. He had seen the best minds of Earth try and fail. The thought of another attempt felt like a futile waste, but he knew they had no choice. He couldn't lead humanity into complete surrender. Not yet. "Let's do it," he said quietly. The plan required getting close to one of the alien ships, finding a way to infiltrate its defenses, and setting up a device that could potentially disrupt their energy field. It wasn't the kind of mission that inspired hope. It was more like a suicide mission, but they had no other option. A group of soldiers, led by a few engineers and scientists, would launch a small assault on one of the ships. They would have one shot, one opportunity to execute their plan before the Council noticed. If they succeeded, they might have a chance to force the Council to negotiate, or at least buy enough time to regroup. The team, a mix of soldiers and technicians, prepared to launch the mission. There was no cheering, no sense of victory. Everyone knew how slim their chances were, and yet there was a strange kind of determination in their eyes. They had all seen what Earth was capable of in the past, its resilience, its will to survive. That spirit had not been completely crushed, even in the face of overwhelming odds. As they boarded their transport ships and made their way toward the massive alien vessels above, Harris stood at the command center, watching the live feed. His fingers clenched into fists, not in anger, but in fear. Fear for the lives of those going into battle, and fear for the future of Earth. If this failed, it could very well be the end of everything. The team was now in position, and the moment of truth had arrived. The alien ship loomed large before them, its surface sleek and impenetrable. They had no idea what to expect once they got inside, but they pressed forward. The soldiers moved quickly, their weapons ready, while the scientists and engineers worked to deploy the disruptor device. The tension was unbearable. Every second felt like an eternity. The soldiers moved in, their boots thudding on the cold, metallic surface of the alien ship as they made their way toward the heart of the vessel. The hum of the ship's energy pulses grew louder, vibrating through their bones. The sense of danger was overwhelming, but they pushed on, knowing that if they didn't succeed, Earth was as good as lost. Suddenly, an alarm blared. The alien ship had detected their presence. A group of soldiers fell back, firing their weapons, but the aliens were too quick, too powerful. They were everywhere. The fight had begun. "Keep moving," one of the engineers shouted. "We need to reach the core." But the alien forces were relentless, and the humans were outmatched. The team was being pushed back, cornered, and the once hopeful mission now seemed destined for failure. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, the human team fought with everything they had. They fought for their planet. They fought for their families. And they fought for their pride. The engineers reached the core. With a final, desperate push, they set the disruptor device in place, and the countdown began. "Get out. Now," one of the soldiers yelled, as the countdown hit 30 seconds. The team raced toward the exit, but the ship's interior was collapsing around them. They had no idea if the device would work, but there was no time to worry about it now. All they could do was run. The ship shook violently, and just as the team reached the transport ships, the device activated. A burst of energy shot through the alien vessel, and for a moment, the ship's power flickered. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but the disruption caused a temporary paralysis. The Council's ships began to lose their grip on Earth's atmosphere, the energy pulses growing weaker. It wasn't a victory, yet, but it was a glimmer of hope. For the first time in days, Earth had struck back, and that spark of defiance, of survival, was all they needed to continue the fight. The team made it back to Earth, battered and bruised, but alive. They had no idea what would happen next, but they had shown the Council that humanity wasn't going to surrender without a fight. And for the first time since rejecting the Council's offer, the future seemed uncertain, but it also seemed possible. The weeks that followed the attack on the alien ship were a strange mixture of hope and despair. Earth had managed to strike back in a small but significant way, disrupting the Council's energy field for a short period of time. The ships hovering over Earth were no longer as invulnerable as they once seemed. For the first time, humanity had a glimpse of hope, a possibility of survival. General Harris stood at the front of the military command center, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the latest updates on the situation. The alien ships had not left, but they were no longer as overwhelming. Their pulses of energy were weaker, the tremors they caused less frequent. It was clear that they were reeling from the disruption caused by the human attack. But that was all they had achieved, one small victory in the grand scheme of things. "General, the resistance is growing," Captain Adamson said, approaching with a file in hand. His voice was filled with a cautious optimism. "There are reports coming in from all over the world. People are organizing. Small pockets of resistance are emerging in the cities." Harris nodded. It was a start, but they weren't out of danger yet. The Council's ships were still there, still looming above Earth like a dark cloud, waiting for the next move. Humanity had bought itself some time, but now it had to act quickly to turn the tide. "Keep monitoring the situation," Harris said, his voice steady. "We need to know everything about those ships. The more we understand them, the better our chances." He turned his attention back to the screens. On the far side of the room, an officer spoke up. "General, we've intercepted more transmissions from the Council." Harris's eyes narrowed. He'd been expecting this. After the disruption, it was only a matter of time before the Council decided to address the humans' growing resistance. "Put it through," he ordered. The screen flickered, and once again, the cold, emotionless face of the alien appeared. The creature's voice, as always, was calm and detached, but this time there was something different, a slight shift in its tone, almost like a warning. "Earth," it began, "you have prolonged your existence, but it will not last. We did not offer you aid for your benefit, but for ours. Your decision to reject our offer has sealed your fate. The time for mercy has passed. You will now face the consequences of your pride." The alien's eyes glowed faintly, and the words sent a shiver down Harris's spine. There was no anger in the voice, no emotion, just a cold finality that left no room for negotiation. "You will not survive this. Earth will fall, and you will be forgotten, just like the many civilizations that have come before you." The transmission ended as quickly as it had begun, and the room fell silent. General Harris could feel the weight of the alien's words settling over him like a cloud of inevitability. It was a harsh message, but there was no room for misinterpretation. The Council had given Earth a chance, and now they were preparing to wipe them out. "We need a new strategy," Harris said, his voice firm. "The Council is coming for us, and we need to be ready. This can't be about small victories anymore. We need to take the fight to them." President Davis, who had been standing at the back of the room, stepped forward. "What are you suggesting, General?" "We have to launch a full-scale counteroffensive," Harris replied. "We've disrupted their ships once. We can do it again. But this time, we'll hit them where it hurts. We have to destroy their ships, one by one." Davis looked hesitant. The idea of going on the offensive against an enemy with such overwhelming power was terrifying. But Harris's words made sense. Earth had nothing left to lose. If they didn't act now, they might never have another chance. "You know what this means, right?" Davis asked, her voice quiet but resolute. "If we fail, we'll be finished." Harris met her gaze. "We're already finished if we don't try." The room was filled with a tense silence as everyone understood the weight of the decision. The stakes had never been higher, but there was no turning back now. Earth had to fight back with everything it had. The counteroffensive began in the dead of night. Humanity's military forces, now fully mobilized and united in their desperation, launched a series of strikes on the alien ships. The attack wasn't large in scale. Most of Earth's remaining forces were still recovering from the earlier devastation, but it was swift and coordinated. The small pockets of resistance around the world had begun to form into a unified front, and for the first time in weeks, the Council's ships seemed to falter. General Harris watched the live feed from the command center as explosions rocked the alien vessels. The human forces weren't winning, not yet, but the Council's ships were no longer as invulnerable as they had been. The disruption devices, now refined and improved, were causing significant damage to the alien energy shields. For the first time, humanity had a fighting chance. But the aliens didn't back down. Within hours, the remaining alien ships retaliated, their pulses of energy sweeping across the surface of Earth once more, causing massive earthquakes and tsunamis. Entire cities were wiped out in an instant, and the air was thick with the sound of destruction. But the humans fought on. "We can't stop," Captain Adamson shouted over the chaos. "Not now. We've come too far." As the battle raged on, it became clear that humanity's resistance, though small, was powerful. Every strike, every disruption, was a message to the Council. We will not go quietly into the night. In the end, Earth wasn't saved in that moment, but the tide had begun to turn. The alien forces, though vastly superior, now had a reason to fear humanity. The Council may have thought Earth would fall in the blink of an eye, but they underestimated humanity's resolve. And as long as that spark of defiance remained, Earth would continue to fight, no matter the odds. The battle for Earth had only just begun.